So we got big announcements here. Stormgate,
Hi there, I'm Alan.
is getting a facelift. And so we're going to see big artistic changes. Stormgate has still been a work in progress. So I was very excited to see this. I'm going to play this video, pause a couple times, and then share my thoughts.
Dylan, I'm art director on Stormgate here at Frost Giant Studios. And today we're going to show you a little bit of a sneak peek of what we're doing with some of the factions and some of the thematic tonal changes to the game. And one reason for that is we released early access and we got a lot of good feedback from the fans. And also it allows us during that time, before we go to 1.0, to kind of step back, realize where we can improve on, what we can iterate on. Just like any game studio, I think early access is tricky because everyone sees behind the curtain a little bit before things are fully baked.
I really agree with this. I didn't know much about game design, by the way, and I think game design for a lot of people is kind of a confusing, mysterious thing. I've been learning a little bit of the Unreal Engine just as kind of like a hobby, and it's been fun. But it's one of the things that Stormgate has faced is that while the game's in a playable state, it's not finished, and so people will look at that and go, "Well, it's not. It doesn't look like a lot of these other polished RTS games," and that's correct, but they're still building on it. And one of the big primary complaints has been the art direction of the game, which I'm a little bit agnostic about. I do think, as long as the game's fun, I'll kind of pick it up no matter what, but I'm realizing that I'm kind of a minority there. I think a lot of people have been very critical, and I think rightfully so. If you look back at the Blizzard RTS art style, they really did embrace the violence. They really, you look at Warcraft 2, with the piercings the orcs had and the scars and the weapons and how grungy it looked, or like Terran Space Marines with the kind of decals on the armor, the Zerg that was very inspired by, is it H.R. Geiger? Is that the guy that made the artwork for Alien? Very H.R. Geiger inspired. I think when you get something that's a war simulator, you really got to kind of come at a certain angle for that. And anyways, I'll let this continue on.
Every studio has the same thing where they kind of sit back and iterate more, and I think this is our chance to do that. And we're talking about some more kind of edgy, hardcore themes for the game. Like, they have space demons. Let's edge them up a little bit, make them a little more evil and more menacing, intimidating. And for the Vanguard, trying to figure out how to make it more unique in the RTS genre and make it feel more like Stormgate's human faction. And so today I'm going to show you a little preview of how we're going to thematically change and kind of reinvent some of the current characters that you already play with. So let's talk about the Infernals first. So one thing I want to do is I want to add more magical elements to them, a lot more glyphs. We almost have this pseudo, I call it the space magic Tron style, where they have these lines on them, which is like magical runes and symbols, and a little edgier, darker, more scary, more intimidating. And this is the Brute, the new version of him. This is a similar iterative process we have going through him. And so obviously with RTSs, you want from top down, you want that weapon to read really well. And so we're going major big with this stuff. And what we ended up doing is going toward this for the final design.
I think one of the things that makes this really good, it's a very clear color scheme. Like if you look at the outline on the edge of the weapon, this part over here, it's going to be really easy to see when this is hitting and connecting. With the old Brute, I did like the two-headed ogre look to it, but regardless of whatever you think of the artwork for the old Brute, when you looked at an actual game, and this is one of the bigger issues I had with Stormgate, not just when I'm casting, but when I'm playing, is sometimes it's not clear what's happening. And if it's not clear what's happening, you can't engage with it, right? And I think this is one of these things, you don't know you had something until it goes away, if that makes sense. And, let's go back to StarCraft 1 for a second. You can so clearly see the pieces on the board. It's almost, in StarCraft 1, which obviously it's an old game, it's 26 years old now, it almost feels like you can pick them up off the screen, the little units. And I think this color schema, and I haven't seen it in game yet, so I don't know. But I think this looks a lot better.
Shapes that read well, more demonic symbols.
Blizzard paid so much attention to the silhouette. Yes.
More of a manufactured, less archaic medieval armor. These guys have been in space for eons, right? And they're not just a bunch of barbarians like Hulk smash. They're much more sophisticated than that, even though they're incredibly violent and evil inherently.
Take a look at the bottom left. My chat's kind of covering it up, but see, this is him with like maybe a blue shoulder pad and a blue blade. That's going to be, so maybe if you're the blue colored player versus the red colored player, it's going to be much easier to see what's going on.
I think one thing we did, a minor thing, is I took the eyes off the character here. That just makes it a little freakier overall. You can't see that in the game, but whenever you see it in the portraits and everything else, you'll notice the intimidating factor. So one cool thing about the brutes is they actually turn into fiends, and so this is a new version of.
So this looks a lot better. More of a kind of, and again, in the bottom left, I'm sorry, my chat's covering this. I didn't notice until we started recording, but it's a fiend, but its face is blue. Or there's kind of almost like, it looks like a little bit of a blue like paint on there or something versus the red paint on this guy's face. Especially with fiends, they were so hard to see. I don't know if it's because on a lot of the maps they had this kind of sandy desert trail, kind of a yellow ground with the grayness of the fiends with on top of the yellow. It's just not clear what's going on. One thing to note, I think a lot of people don't know this, and I would only know this because I've worked in StarCraft esports for a long time, but they used to have snow levels in multiplayer for StarCraft 1, and they had to remove them because the snow, it would hurt. You couldn't see pylons warping in clearly on top of the snow. And that was just, there were some, specifically with Protoss, I guess you could have a Terran versus Circuit that would probably be fine on there, but it was just kind of hard to see what's going on. Like you would scout a base, you might not see the second gateway warping in on the snow. You might think you're against one gate and just literally think it's snow. And so the easy fix for that is you just never make snow tile sets. In StarCraft 1, we've got space tile sets. We've got, kind of a forest tile set. We have some desert tile sets. We don't use that. I wonder if it's for the same reasons. But yeah, it's interesting to see these new iterations of these units because I think they're going to show up better on the maps they're using.
That. If you're familiar with the game, this is definitely a departure, but it feels more thematically tied into the new brute, of course, and you can see the similarities with the horns, and again, no eyes on them, and it's kind of a raptor-ish.
I do like the no eyes thing.
Feel like
I hadn't really thought about it.
Intimidating, like if it had a slight horror movie vibe to it. So here we have a current unit, the Gaunt, that we redid from scratch. You may notice it now is not a body on the ground anymore. It is a quadruped, more demonic centaur element, and we have the ruins on it. Just play up the magical element.
I think this is a very deliberate move to make the Gaunt more like a centaur. I think because this way you have a quadruped unit on the ground, and then you have the biped with the brute. And these are the first two units you're going to have, so they're very distinct from each other, right? You've also got the horns kind of coming out on the side. Anyways, I think it's a good choice.
We try to make it more just intimidating, more beast-like. And instead of throwing axes, it now has a magical energy glaive, which kind of shoots out like a boomerang. And it feels like it's got a much better read in the game, and it definitely has a much more darker tone to it than our previous version. So here we go. Here is some new concepts for a caster character for the Infernals. And as you can see, compared to the current release of the game, this is, again, much more darker, much more sinister, just more intimidating, a little more grotesque, and just overall darker, edgier. So those concepts led to this final concept of our caster. And
wow,
again, it's very unique. We're trying to make it more creepy and feel like what's special about our IP and what's special about our space demons. And the fact that he's got all these multiple sets of arms that fold in and make the body, and he's got magic just oozing through him.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. It's a whole bunch of arms folded together here. Oh, that's actually sick. See this on the left side here? I didn't realize those were arms folded. Oh, I actually really like that. I was more focused on the head the first time I watched this. Oh yeah, arm robe. I really like that.
It's very unique. We're trying to make it more creepy and feel like what's special about our IP and what's special about our space demons. And the fact that he's got all these multiple sets of arms that fold in and make the body, and he's got magic just oozing through him, and just like lots of effects are gonna be going off in this guy. Lots of the ruins and the glyphs, of course. We're trying to play with the masks right now on some of the characters to determine if there's anything in the lore for the Infernals that'd be kind of cool. Like, they can only show their face if they get to a certain level of achievement or destruction in their society or something. So there's some cool lore building we're trying to do right now with this stuff too. That's just really exciting. And you'll notice the rune on top. So we want to kind of edge those into the game in a way that makes sense for spell casting and buildings being activated, and play that up a lot more. So here's another character we're playing with right now. It's a caster, and it's kind of a take on the Hellraiser old puzzle box type of thing, where she's standing on like a Pandora's box, and she has this key of sorts, and she'll plug it in to unleash it, and it would transform and cast out various spells. So going from the initial sketch is just the idea of it, and then once we figure out the theme and the basic gameplay and what we want her to be like, then we go into the concept phase here, which we detail out a lot more with our amazing concept artists. And as you can see, the key turned into more of a magical staff, and we're trying to figure out how to make it more dynamic with it pivoting around in different key combinations, and also trying to figure out is the puzzle box, is that the best thing we could use for a thematic vehicle for her to stand on? And so here's just some other ideas. All of them are super cool, and there's never a problem coming up with cool ideas. The problem is trying to figure out which ones fit and which ones you actually can have time for, because there's all these tying in with narrative and gameplay, and so it's trying to tie all the pieces together is the tricky part. But we have a lot of good ideas here, and so we took that and we came up with another round of them, dialing things in a bit more. And as we also worked on the infernal new structures and bases, the buildings, we try to tie some of those architectural elements and some of the themes and ruins and colors into this, so there's more of a cohesive feel for them across the whole race. This is the final version for the model sheet, although we're still playing with the shape of the box on the bottom. And the point here is the key goes into the puzzle box, and some kind of basic transformation. Cool magical effects going off, and she's going to be really unique and, again, more intimidating, more elegant in a certain way than a typical brute would be, but still very vicious and intimidating, and trying to put a spin on it, because right now it's so hard to put the spin on demons, right? It's been done every which way in the universe, and so we're trying to figure out what makes our ones unique, what makes ours just more interesting and cool. The fact that the Infernals have been around for eons again, and have had a civilization that's, although incredibly violent and just sinister, they've actually evolved over time to have this like magical tech to a degree, and they're not just monsters with chains and horns and screaming and running to their death, right? They're much more sophisticated than that. So we're trying to use this character here to help kind of convey some of those elements. So we talked about that last character being influenced a bit by the architecture, and so this is a very basic example of something that we might have for the Infernals, which is a huge monolithic magical generator of sorts. Once we get the cornerstones and the keystones of some of these themes and elements and colors, and feel good about that, that will tie in directly to the units and the other buildings. And so it starts off with a little point like this, and then it branches off and everything starts snowballing, which is great. And so here's just a very quick preview of some of the new shape language we're talking about. Again, this is just super ideation of big monolithic elements that look very heavy, intimidating, and have some animation thought to them. Again, this is just something we may or may not use, but it's just a starting point which you have to.
I wonder what this will look like on top of the shroud. If you haven't played Stormgate yet, the Infernals, they have it's kind of like Creep. I mean, that's probably the easiest shortcut to describe it, but it does have different functions. I wonder if that would be too dark on the shroud, but I guess, if it's too dark, they can change it.
Have in order to kick everything off. And so that's just a sneak peek into what we're doing for the Infernals. And we're also trying to update some of the other races as well. So here's a little preview of something we're playing with on the new technology level we're trying out for the Vanguard. Super excited about it.
It's Lancer?
But you can tell here we're showcasing the more rounded and advanced underlying technology in the Vanguard, and less of the kind of ragtag, rusty, duct taped survivor kind of stuff with the gray boxes and everything. And we're trying to figure out how to make our stuff unique, like what makes our Vanguard, our humans in Stormgate different, and not just a ragtag group of soldiers using rusty old equipment. And so they would still have the war-torn elements to it. They've been through awesome fights with bullet holes, scratch marks, magic burn marks on them, dirt. But this is just a showcase of what we could go with the style and has it propagate out to the rest of the army. Now, this unit has a lot of feedback from the community, and so we decided to target it for one of the.
So this is the hedgehog. I always thought the hedgehog looked weird, and so I think it's great that they're going to rework this.
Designing from scratch for the Vanguard. It's the same functionality, same gameplay. It's a fast land vehicle. It shoots out missiles. There's gameplay specific things like you need to see the missiles so you can count them when they're shooting. And he transforms into this missile tower when he's deployed, and you can see the transformation on the side here, how it works out. We had to figure it all out. And the next phase will be blocking it out, getting some basic animations in, and it's always tricky when we do a unit like this because it's super cool. I love transforming things, group with Robotech and all that, and it's super geeky, and we love it. It just takes a lot longer to figure everything out, and so it's definitely some consideration about which ones we want to redo at what point, but we're super excited about this one. So that was just a little peek into the new direction we're doing for the Vanguard and the Infernals, and we have so much more cool stuff to show you guys. Can't wait to get into your hands, and thanks for stopping by.
Very cool. Very, very cool. These are exciting changes. I think it would have been beneficial to them if they had made some of these earlier on, but I think these are very welcome. I'm curious to see what they do with Celestial. I felt like aesthetically, Celestial was the least, I guess, exciting. When I look at stuff like this, I kind of go back to my childhood and I try to remember why I even started playing StarCraft or, Warcraft 2 before that at all. And, the three big RTS games of my childhood, we're talking like pre-high school basically, was Warcraft 2, Command & Conquer, and StarCraft, all of which are like aesthetically literally perfect, I think. Command & Conquer, it still has some of the best soundtracks of all time. By the way, they do have, I think it's Frank Clappy? I don't know how to say his last name, but I'm a huge fan of his work. They have him making some of the music in Stormgate. So they have that. But the music in Command & Conquer was great. The sound effects were just so good. The sounds of the soldiers getting killed. The everything. The game telling you like upgrade, like you're selling a building or a unit's complete. The voice was very cool. And Warcraft 2, the tattoos like the orcs had and all the piercings and everything. Like I was saying earlier, with StarCraft, the decals on the Marines. I guess you need to have a certain type of artwork to kind of suck people into the world. Now, StarCraft is such a different thing to me. I'm almost detached from the lore. I think probably like a lot of you guys are. Or like you had a good time with the lore, but you're much more interested in the strategies and the players and the maps and stuff like that. I think the biggest issues I had with Stormgate when I played it was visual clarity was not always there. And by far the biggest issue was the sound, which they're going to be fixing here. Was that battles would happen and it just wouldn't be clear to me that things are happening at all. When you think of the sounds of spider mines popping up and exploding, it's a very distinct sound. Like the alert when you hear that go off, a Dragoon exploding. StarCraft 1 may have the best sound design of almost any game ever. Like everything is so perfect, to like the humming of the resource gathering, to the sound of a siege tank sieging up, to each of the UIs. UI is not the right word. What do you call it where the game says like upgrade complete or you like mine more minerals? I don't know. What is the word for that? But they're pretty perfect. All the sounds of the Zerg buildings when you click on them. It's kind of an audio masterpiece. So Stormgate needs to get there. And it seems almost like they tried to scale the sounds like early game units to make our less impactful sounds than late game units. You want to have loud sounds. Loud, clear, distinct sounds because I find StarCraft personally impossible to play without sounds. I use the sounds constantly. And so I think you want to have that clank, like when you hear a Zealot hit, you immediately know it's hitting. It's so clear. Or when the Zergling hits, that kind of that good scratchy thud. So I'm excited to see what's going to be next for Stormgate. The final thing that I had an issue with Stormgate with when I played it was that the maps were too complex for the sake of being complex. All the maps that they made, they were like either too big or they were too... by the way, I'm saying this as someone who's supposed to be an RTS expert. I've dedicated my whole life to RTS games. Every day, I'm either playing RTS games or I'm watching them or I'm casting them. They all look like maps that pro gamers ban because they're too complicated. Yeah, I heard Artosis' tournament with no creeps played better. The issue with the maps, like I learned how to play StarCraft 1 on a map called Bloodbath. Some of you might know it. It's the smallest possible map. There's no elevation. It's it's a four spawn map, 4 spawn location map. And you're really close together. And it's just people rushing each other. But it taught me how to understand rushes and all that. And what you need to do if you're going to have good games on Stormgate is you actually want really basic maps. Just because complex maps exist and there were great games on them doesn't mean pro gamers or myself have any idea how to play on them. I need to have a basic, frankly, a boring map so I can understand the parameters of the game, what I can and can't do, what a rush actually feels like. Yo, Casually Explained, thank you for the raid, man. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I'm just finishing up a YouTube video here. We're talking about a Stormgate. But let me know next time you're coming to Korea, man. I want to hang out with you again. So I think that if you're going to have a new RTS game, you don't want complex maps. You want basic maps. That doesn't mean you don't want to have like an island map or a map with like an expansion in the back of your base, but keep it simple. Give me a small entrance. Let me wall in. Let me learn how to tech. A lot of the maps they had in Stormgate, there were like 2 entrances or like a giant ramp. It's like, why? Why don't you let people learn really basic gameplay and then you can evolve and grow into these complicated maps? And then the final thing with Stormgate that I think confuses me and confuses a lot of other people is I don't understand the role of the creeps. You don't want to have creeps in a game just because they're creeps. Like, if you look at, the most famous game with creeps is Warcraft 3. So why are there creeps in that? Because there are heroes that, A, level up, and then B, get items. Most importantly, items. You kill a creep and you go, oh, okay, there's a teleport scroll. Is that what it's called? Scroll of teleport? I think what it's called. Oh, it's Claws of Attack +6 or +11 or whatever. And so there's no way to play Warcraft 3 without creeps. And Warcraft 3, by the way, might be the most experimental RTS game of all time. I'm not saying we ever have to go back to that. But in Stormgate, the creeps, like, it's a speed camp, a speed upgrade camp. I'm like, okay. And you also get some resources, which is, like, confusing. I've had games where one guy's creeping on one base and one guy fast expands. I can't tell you who's ahead. I don't understand that. That's not clear. And by the way, I do this for a living. And if I can't do it, and I've got to be in, the top 1% of RTS players, probably even higher than that. And if I'm having a hard time with it, and when I talk to pros, it's the same thing. It's not immediately obvious. You could have a creep camp where you kill it, it creates a bridge to another part of the map. A creep camp can do whatever you can imagine it to do. But when you have, this is a heal camp or this is a speed camp, and then the positions of them sometimes don't make sense, that's when you end up with a problem. And so I'm agnostic on creeps. I don't care if you have them or if you don't have them, but I need to know what I'm supposed to do with them. And I think Stormgate, once they get past the sound or visuals, you're going to need to create an environment where things on some level are obvious at the start. I think they've done this better. The start of a Stormgate game is I think, a little bit easier to get into than Zero Space, as an example. That's another RTS I'm reading for. Zero Space, I feel like there's just too many things I'm supposed to be doing at the start of a game. When a StarCraft game starts out, let's talk about StarCraft 1 or StarCraft 2. StarCraft 2, right when it came out, we had, you get 4 workers. Can't make any buildings. Sorry, the cat's over here. The tail's on camera now. You get 4 workers. You make this building. That allows you to make this building. You branch out. Okay, now you've got 2 bases. There's this sort of general sense of where the direction of the game's going, even if you're a bad player. Even if you play 4v4 on BGH and you're never going to play a competitive game, you at least kind of know how to get there. Everybody knows it. It was 6 workers for StarCraft 2. Yeah, sorry, 4 for StarCraft 1. And I feel like Stormgate kind of has that feel to it. That, I kind of know where to grow. Sorry, my cat's butt is sitting on the keyboard. Okay. So I think they have that, but then with the creeps, I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not clear what I want to do. or what I need to do in order to get into it. Yeah, I think if they can figure that out, they're going to have a great game. The other thing with Stormgate, because there's a lot of doomers talking about the game, but the reality is it's not like there's some other RTS game that everyone is going to go to. We've got Zero Space, Battle Aces, and Stormgate. All of them aren't out yet. Right now, everybody plays StarCraft 1, 2, Warcraft 3, Age of Empires 2. I think some people are playing Age of Mythology. These are all old games. So if they get the formula right, I think people will show up. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for joining me for this video. Go to tastelessthreads.com. See this cool APM shirt? You can buy that on my merch site. And yeah, I appreciate you joining me. Have a good one. I hope to see you in a future video.